Welcome to the Anti-Trafficking Response Academy by International Rescue Committee. Today, we will delve into an under-recognized form of human trafficking, forced criminality. Forced criminality is when someone is forced to break the law or commit a crime, such as selling drugs, committing fraud, or carrying out an assault, under threat, coercion, violence, or debt, usually by a trafficker or exploiter for their own financial gain. Traffickers adapt to world events, social trends, and new technologies, including in cases of human trafficking for forced criminality, sometimes called human trafficking for criminal exploitation. In this short video, we will explore what forced criminality is, how widespread it is, the principle of non-punishment, common forms of forced criminality, and emerging trends. Forced criminality is a form of human trafficking in which individuals are coerced, deceived, or forced to commit crimes for the financial benefit of traffickers or exploiters. This can include activities such as shoplifting, pickpocketing, drug dealing, or illegal cultivation, with victims not being free to leave. While the Palermo Protocol does not explicitly list forced criminality as a form of trafficking, they are often interpreted as covering it under broader categories such as forced labor. Victims of trafficking, and particularly victims of forced criminality, are frequently treated as criminals, subjected to arrest and prosecution rather than identified as victims and protected. The non-punishment principle establishes that victims of trafficking should not be arrested, charged, detained, prosecuted, or otherwise penalized for unlawful acts they were compelled to commit as a direct consequence of their exploitation. This principle is a cornerstone of a victim-centered and human rights-based approach. It ensures that survivors receive protection and support, while also enhancing the integrity and effectiveness of the justice system. This principle, while initially formalized by the Council of Europe Convention on Action Against Trafficking in Human Beings in 2005 and later on by the 2011 EU Directive, is now an internationally recognized human rights standard. However, in practice, this principle is often not properly applied, and many victims still face charges for crimes they were compelled to carry out. Between 2016 and 2022, the number of cases of trafficking for forced criminality identified increased from 1% to 8% of all human trafficking cases globally. The rise in identified victims might be due to more cases being reported, better recognition, or a combination of both factors. Forced criminality can affect anyone, but it seems to disproportionately impact males, especially boys. In 2022, 68% of identified victims were boys, 24% were adult men. Data can be influenced by gender bias. In some cases, girls are more likely to be identified as victims, while boys are often viewed as troublemakers, treated as offenders rather than in need of protection. The phenomenon known as ethnicized tunnel vision, in which attention is focused exclusively on one ethnic group, such as Roma people in Europe, for example, to the neglect of others who are also at risk, should be avoided in both analysis and response. Risk factors such as poverty, exposure to violence, marginalization, forced migration backgrounds, or exclusion from education can increase vulnerability to forced criminality, regardless of gender or ethnicity. Individuals who are trafficked for forced criminality can be forced into a wide range of illegal activities. These acts may appear criminal, but they are actually forms of exploitation. Victims can be coerced into producing, transporting, or selling drugs, often under the control of gangs or organized crime networks. They can also be trafficked in the cannabis cultivation industry, where many victims are migrant children. Theft and petty crime. This includes pickpocketing, shoplifting, or selling stolen goods, usually under threat or pressure from traffickers, who sometimes are family members. Fraud and scams. Victims may be forced into online fraud, identity theft, or financial scams like fake loans, credit card fraud, or pig butchering schemes. Traffickers often compel them to open bank accounts or take out loans and commit fraud in their own names, leaving them with ruined credit and lifelong debt. Human smuggling. For example, in some regions, such as Central America or along the Mediterranean route, migrants are later forced to smuggle others, often under threats or debt bondage. In some contexts, victims are forced to transport or conceal goods across borders or conflict zones under threat or coercion. In other cases, victims are forced to carry weapons or other illicit goods. Some terrorist groups traffic people to carry out suicide attacks or support militant operations. Victims of sex trafficking can be coerced into additional crimes like drug distribution, theft, or trick-and-roll robberies, all under traffickers' control. Children can be especially vulnerable. Traffickers often exploit minors in all the forms described, including theft, petty crime, drug dealing, and fraud. And these offences frequently go unnoticed because the children are treated as criminals rather than as victims in need of protection. In recent years, a new and alarming trend in forced criminality has emerged across Southeast Asia. Well-organised criminal networks are trafficking young men and women, often recruited through fraudulent online job advertisements, to work in large-scale online scam and fraud operations. Victims, many of whom possess language or IT skills, are deceived, thinking they apply to legit jobs, finally confined in guarded compounds and forced to carry out cybercrimes under threat and coercion. Reports document severe abuse, physical punishment, and deprivation of liberty. Increasingly, these criminal enterprises are also exploiting artificial intelligence, including chatbots, deepfakes, and AI-generated phishing messages, to enhance deception, automate operations, and evade detection by security systems. In forced criminality cases, behind every crime may be someone deprived of choice and safety. Recognizing, not punishing victims, and improving how we identify and support them is key to breaking exploitation and building a more just, survivor-centered response. Learn more about human trafficking, its complexity, and anti-trafficking efforts through our other educational videos and resources available on our website. Thank you for joining us in this crucial mission.